Hello and welcome to the Indiana Century Podcast, hosted by Corey Easterday. Episode 20, What High-Speed Rail Means for My Main Street. Part 1, More Than a Train. People hear high-speed rail and think about the fastest trains in the world. They imagine Japan, France, or some other foreign distant place. That is not what this episode is about. This episode focuses on something smaller, more human. It is about the town that could get a station, the main street that has been empty for 20 years, the local cafe that might suddenly have customers again, the family that could live in Kokomo and work in Indianapolis without spending 2 hours in traffic. The proposed Innovation Triangle will connect Indianapolis, West Lafayette, and Kokomo at its anchor points, but those are only the spine. The spine will need ribs, and the train will need stops. Those stops will create the real transformation. Consider towns like Columbus, Seymour, Scottsburg, Bloomington, Terre Haute, Muncie, and Anderson. These places have been waiting for something to change. The interstate has hollowed them out, manufacturing left, people and money drained away. High-speed rail will provide the spine of a new Indiana, while stations could become new main streets for towns that lost theirs. People would get off the train and walk into the community, and economic development could happen on the street, in the storefronts, and in the faces of people who live there. Episode 20 examines what high-speed rail could mean for towns along a potential route. The engineering and right-of-way battles matter, but this episode covers the human impact, the opportunities, the fears, the hope. This is what sovereignty could look like on Main Street right here in Indiana. Part 2, The Geography of Nowhere. This episode's featured book is The Geography of Nowhere by James Howard Kunstler. The Geography of Nowhere traces America's evolution from a nation of main streets and coherent communities to a land where every place is like no place in particular, where the cities are dead zones and the countryside is a wasteland of cartoon architecture and parking lots. In elegant and often hilarious prose, Kunstler depicts our nation's evolution from the pilgrim settlements to the modern auto suburb in all its ghastliness. The Geography of Nowhere tallies up the huge economic, social, and spiritual costs that America is paying for its car-crazed lifestyle. It is also a wake-up call for citizens to reinvent the places where we live and work, to build communities that are once again worthy of our affection. Kunstler proposes that by reviving civic art and civic life, we will rediscover public virtue and a new vision of the common good. The future will require us to build better places, Kunstler says, or the future will belong to other people in other societies. Kunstler wrote this book in 1993, but it reads like a contemporary critique. He argues that America's built environment, our suburbs, strip malls, highways, has become ugly, alienating, and unsustainable. Communities traded for convenience. Main streets traded for big box stores. Walkability traded for cars. Kunstler calls suburbs the greatest misallocation of resources in the history of the world, and his critique extends beyond aesthetics to economics, social connection, and spiritual health. The way America has built communities has made people poorer, more isolated, and less resilient. 3 lessons from Kunstler matter for this episode. First, place matters. The way communities are built shapes how people live, connect, and thrive, and a walkable Main Street town differs fundamentally from a strip mall town. Kunstler argues that America lost the art of building places people loved and replaced them with places people tolerate. Second, infrastructure carries value. The interstate highway system moved cars, but it also moved people out of cities and into suburbs. It hollowed out downtowns and destroyed main streets, reflecting American priorities of speed and convenience over community and connection. Third, better alternatives do exist. Kunstler is a critic rather than a utopian, but his critique points towards a walkable, beautiful, human-scaled places people want to inhabit, places that build community, places worth caring about. The Indiana Century Project's proposed high-speed rail and station-centric development embodies Kunstler's alternative. The project would build trains, but it would also build places. It would build new main streets. It would build communities that people actually love. The Indiana Century Project learns from the Interstate's era's mistakes and proposes to build differently, with communities rather than against them. Part 3. What happened to Main Street? I am proudly from small-town Indiana. I went to part of elementary school and middle school in Scottsburg, Indiana, and I went to high school in Brownstown, Indiana. Small-town Indiana tells a familiar story. Empty storefronts, boarded-up windows, crumbling sidewalks, a cafe that is barely hanging on, a hardware store that closed 5 years ago, a pharmacy that moved to a strip mall or turned into a CVS. Drive through Rushville, Shelbyville, Greensburg, Batesville, and you will see towns that once had their thriving downtowns, and now only bones remain. The buildings stand, the life has gone. This was not always the case. Before interstates, rail connected small towns and functioned as the economic artery. The train brought goods, customers, and connection, and Main Street was the community center because the station was there. People arrived there, commerce happened there. The interstate changed everything. Trains stopped running, stations closed, highways bypassed towns. Cars sped past, people who could leave did, and people who stayed watched their towns empty. Kunstler calls this the geography of nowhere, places without place-ness, stopping points on the way to somewhere else. No center, no identity, no reason to stay. The economic costs cascade. When Main Street dies, the tax base collapses. Schools close, hospitals close, young people leave, old people remain, the town becomes a shell. This pattern resulted from choice rather than natural forces. Highway over trains, suburbs sprawl over downtowns, speed over community, cars over people. Washington made those choices, not Hoosiers. The interstate system came from federal policy, and federal bureaucrats decided highway routes. Local communities had essentially no say. The Indiana Century Project proposes different choices. Indiana would design its own future. That is sovereignty. Part 4. What high-speed rail could do. The proposed Innovation Triangle high-speed rail line would connect Indianapolis, West Lafayette, and Kokomo within 30-minute commutes between vertices. This could change everything. A station would give a town an economic anchor. People would get off the train, walk into the community, buy coffee, visit shops, stay, and return. Economists call this transit-oriented development, and it builds places where people want to live and work and play. It creates walkable, connected, vibrant communities. A station would deliver multiple benefits. New businesses would open because foot traffic brings customers, and customers bring new business. Cafes, shops, restaurants, and services would fill vacant storefronts. New housing would emerge because people will want to live near the station and walk to the train. The station would become a neighborhood center with apartments above shops and townhouses on side streets. New jobs would appear because the train will carry workers and expand the labor pool for local businesses. A software developer could live in Bloomington and work in Indianapolis. A manufacturing worker could live in Kokomo and train at Purdue. The region would become one labor market. New pride would develop because the station would give a town something beyond survival: hope, connection, investment, a future. The Innovation Triangle would benefit Indianapolis, West Lafayette, and Kokomo, but the station towns along the route would benefit too. Places that have waited for change will finally get it. The Indiana Century Project will not force stations on anyone. If a town does not want a station, the project will respect that decision and move a few miles down the road to a town that does want one. This will create competition. Towns will compete for the station, economic development, and the chance to become the new Main Street. That competition will bring their best land, best design, and best partnership. The train would partner with communities, and partners would choose each other. Part 5. What people worry about. Honest conversations about high-speed rail includes fears. When people hear high-speed rail, they often think about disruption, change they did not ask for, and their town becoming something unrecognizable. Common fears deserve attention. What about rising housing costs? Stations raise property values, which helps property owners but hurts renters and can push people out of their neighborhoods. This has happened in other cities. The Indiana Century Project will address this through community land trusts, inclusionary zoning, and rent control for station adjacent housing. The project will build permanently affordable housing. What about loss of character? People worry about chain stores and generic development. The Indiana Century Project will address this through station-centric design that reflects community character. Local artists would design stations. Local businesses would get preference for station retail. The community would preserve its character because the community decides. What about feeling like an outsider? People worry about visitors who do not care about the community and the train becoming a tourist stop rather than a home. The Indiana Century Project will address this through local control. The community would decide the station's appearance, who rents storefronts, and what the town becomes. What about pace of change? Change moves fast and can feel overwhelming. The Indiana Century Project will address this through community benefit agreements, local advisory councils, and binding local consent. Communities would have a say. They will not be bulldozed. The train would come only with community agreement. These fears are real and rational. The Indiana Century Project does not dismiss them. It will design for equity, listen to communities, and build with them. Part 6. Beauty as infrastructure. The stations themselves deserve attention. They will not be generic, identical across towns, or soulless boxes. The Indiana Century Project will build with Indiana limestone, the stone that built courthouses, the State House, even the Washington Monument. It is Indiana's signature material and says Indiana in a way glass and steel cannot. The Indiana Century Project will build with Indiana hardwood responsibly, like walnut, oak, and locust. Harvested from Hoosier forests, milled by Hoosier workers, and crafted by Hoosier artisans. The grain and smell would speak of place. The Indiana Century Project will build with art. Local artists would decide how to decorate each station with murals, sculptures, and mosaics. Each station would reflect its community's character. The Columbus station would not look like the Terre Haute station because the people of Columbus would make it their own. This follows the Rockefeller philosophy. Rockefeller built offices at Rockefeller Center in New York City, but he also built art, public space, and beauty. He understood that beauty draws people in and makes them stay, and that beauty functions as infrastructure. The Indiana Century Project will apply this philosophy statewide: beauty as infrastructure, art as economic development, pride as a public good. Local artists would decorate the art, not a committee in Indianapolis or a consultant from Chicago. Local artists and local communities would paint the murals, carve the wood, and make the station theirs. That is sovereignty, owning the art and the infrastructure, owning the stories it tells, owning the place and the pride that it builds. Part 7. Respected work for everyone. Most people only think about construction jobs when they think about high-speed rail employment. Track layers, station builders, those are important jobs, and the Indiana Century Corps would train people for them. Construction jobs represent only a part of the employment picture. Operations and station services would create careers that last generations. Trains will need operators, engineers, conductors, signal controllers, and dispatchers. These are skilled, respected careers. In China and Japan, train operators rank among the most respected workers as guardians of public safety. They are professionals, visible, and known. Stations will need ticket agents, customer service staff, maintenance workers, cleaners, security personnel, and food service workers. These are respected careers in Europe, where station staff serve as public servants. They are visible, helpful, and part of the community. Trains will need deep cleaning every night. This job keeps people safe and comfortable and deserves respect, good pay, and good benefits. Stations will need polished floors, clean windows, clean restrooms, and tended landscaping. These essential services create the infrastructure of dignity. The Indiana Century Project would build a system where the conductor, cleaner, ticket agent, signal operator, and landscaper all receive fair pay, training, and career pathways. Every job would be a respected career. Switzerland's federal railways provide a model. The Swiss take national pride in their railway system. Staff receives respect, service runs reliably, trains stay clean. The success depends on people, not just hardware. A sovereign workforce owns its skills and careers. It is not disposable. It is the system's backbone and face. The Indiana Century Corps would protect these jobs, and they would not be contracted to the lowest bidder. They would be state jobs with security, dignity, and middle-class wages. The Indiana Century Project would build a system that creates good jobs for generations. Every worker would receive respect, every career would receive value, and every person would be seen. Part 8. New Main Streets in a Connected Future. I want you to imagine a struggling small Indiana town. Empty storefronts, a boarded up old train station, a vacant main street. The people who stayed are the ones who could not leave. The high-speed rail line arrives. The station rebuilds, not as a generic glass box, but as a beautiful building with limestone, wood, and art that reflects the community's character. People want to be there. The station anchors development as a walkable neighborhood rather than a strip mall. Apartments could be above the shops, a cafe on the corner, a small park, a gathering plaza. People want to live, work, and play there. Main Street comes back to life. Vacant storefronts fill with local businesses like a hardware store, bakery, bookstore, or restaurant. the street begins filling with people. The train brings visitors from other towns. They get off, walk around, spend money, and leave. The local economy grows. The tax base grows. The schools stay open. The hospital stays open. Young people start staying, and old people are no longer alone. This is not some made-up fantasy. It has happened in other countries. Denmark's Copenhagen S-train network integrates seamlessly with bike infrastructure. Passengers get off the train and step onto bike lanes that take them to their offices. It functions as a way of life and not just transportation. Switzerland's federal railways inspire national pride. The trains run on time, stations are clean, staff are professional. It delivers an experience, not just a ride on a train. Sweden's Art in the Stations initiative commissions local artists to create murals, sculptures, and mosaics. Each station has a unique artistic identity. It becomes a culture, not just boring infrastructure. Indiana can do the same. We have flat terrain, existing rail corridors, an industrial workforce, and the will to make it all happen. The only piece is the decision. Once the innovation triangle builds out, Indiana will export that knowledge, hardware, and workforce. Other states will buy their trains from Indiana, and Indiana will become the manufacturing hub for American high-speed rail. That is economic sovereignty. Kunstler warned that America lost the art of building places people love. And he was right. America built strip malls, parking lots, and highways that connect nothing to nothing. America can build differently. Places people love, walkable, connected, vibrant communities, new main streets that bring life back to towns empty for decades. This project would create a different way of living, connecting, and being a Hoosier. Part 9. Conclusion and Preview. This episode covered Main Street, high-speed rail route towns, opportunities, fears, hope, beauty, and careers. The featured book was The Geography of Nowhere by James Howard Kunstler. He warned that America lost the art of building places people love. The Indiana Century Project proposes to recover that art. The high-speed rail line would move people, but it would also build communities, create new main streets, give people hope, create respected careers, and build beauty that Hoosiers can take pride in. The Indiana Century Project will not force this on anyone. It would build only in towns that want a station. That, in fact, is sovereignty. Local control, local choice. The state would provide infrastructure. The community would decide whether to connect. When the Indiana Century Project builds, it would build beautifully with limestone, hardwood, and local art. Beauty functions as infrastructure. It tells people they matter. It tells them someone invested in them. It tells them their town is worth caring about. Next week, in episode 21, Powering the Rails, the Small Modular Reactor High-Speed Rail Electrification Link, the technical and economic case for a nuclear-powered rail. Before next week, I'd like you to think about a town you have driven through in Indiana, a place where you see empty storefronts, boarded up windows, a crumbling train station, a place that used to matter. Now, imagine that same town with a new high-speed rail station, beautiful limestone, hardwood, local art, people getting off the train, empty storefronts filling up, a bakery opens, a bookstore, a hardware store, young families moving back, the school is funded and it stays open, the hospital stays open. The Indiana Century Project would build that future for towns waiting for change. The Indiana Century Project will not force this on anyone. It would build only where towns want a station. Sovereignty local control, local choice. We have to build this 1 mile at a time, one station at a time, one community at a time. I'm Corey. This is the Indiana Century Podcast. And remember, sovereignty isn't given, it is built.